Anwar, you are the first speaker ever in this conference who was applauded before speaking. And I'm sure that it will be the same after. I think this is the fourth time that we have this dialogue. I thank you very much for that, and I thank you also once more because, as all our friends know, the fact that we have held this conference here in Abu Dhabi in the last 4 years is due to you. Thank you very much. So now the situation, the world situation, the global situation, unfortunately, has not improved much since our last dialogue. But I am happy to see that you smile, which shows, ladies and gentlemen, that there is still hope. I suggest that we start, of course, with the situation in this region. The collapse of Bashar al-Assad took many of us by surprise. It happened even though we knew that the general context had weakened his own position, of course. But events went very far, and it seems that this has once more changed the whole game, if I can say so. So my first natural question is, what is your assessment of the new situation, particularly from the viewpoint of Iran? Iran seems to be very severely weakened. What does it mean? What does it mean in terms of prediction with the new Trump administration? And what does it mean from the viewpoint of the security of this region, particularly the Gulf in general, and of course the Emirates in particular? A simple question to start.
Thank you very much. I was actually smiling because we start always by saying that the world is really, chaotic and precarious, etc. And I think it keeps us busy, and also it gives us also variety because it's not the same issue every year. But I want to say that what we are seeing in the region, and even prior to Assad's fall, is really a geostrategic earthquake. And I think it'll take some time for us to understand the dimensions of the geostrategic earthquake. I think there are common sense prescriptions that we in the UAE very much subscribe to, but I'll come to that. But I think today, looking at the situation in Syria, and this is dynamic, it's unfolding, and as we speak today, our Foreign Minister, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, is in Jordan with the Arab Contact group of various Arab countries, trying to also keep up also with events in Syria and try and sort of ensure that these developments are basically stabilized in the region. I would say vis-a-vis Syria, there are three important keywords. I think number one is hope, number two is concern, and number three is opportunity. I think the hope is that the Syrians finally will be able to build a system that can encompass all of them and able to move forward because the Syrians are a very talented people, as we have seen with huge success stories everywhere in the world. So I think this is very important. I think for them, what is extremely important is for them to overcome their tortured history And if you really look at the history of Syria, since independence in 1946, it is really a history of coups and a history of military interventions and a history of conflict and wars. And in the last 54 years of the Assad family rule also, this has been even more difficult in terms of the pictures that we have seen of prisons, etc. It's not that we didn't know they existed, but I think the actual imagery is so powerful. So I think the first thing we would say is hope. And the hope is that basically the lessons of the past, number one, of basically marginalizing components within Syrian society has failed. Lesson number two of an economy that has been insulated but corrupt also has failed. And of course, lesson number three is foreign intervention in Syrian affairs. I mean, there's an important book by Patrick Seal, long time ago, which was about the Arab Cold War in Syria. And I think we've seen a repetition of that recently with various actors being important players in Syria, regional and international. I think lesson number two is concern. And the concern here is this is a dynamic situation. And the dynamic situation is we hear some, what I would say, some reasonable and rational language about unity, about not imposing a system on all Syrians, etc. But on the other hand also, our concern also is the nature of the new forces that are coming in. And the affiliation with the Brotherhood, the affiliation with Al-Qaeda, and I think these are all, these are all indicators that are quite worrying. So I think we have also to be optimistic on the one hand and help the Syrians in the difficult task that is at hand today. And it really is a monumental difficult task. But at the same time, I think we can't also ignore that the region has seen these episodes before. So clearly, we do need also to be on guard to look at that. I think the third issue is opportunity. So every crisis, as you know, has opportunities there. So various things, I mean, again, I hope that Iran, from events in Syria and Lebanon, understands that its foray into the Arab world through militias, etc., does not bring security to Iran. And that this will be a call for Iran to concentrate really on what I would call reasonable and rational concerns about its national security and about also its domestic economy and its about own plans, etc. I think on the other hand, this is also an opportunity for the Arab world to extend a hand to Syria and help to rebuild what is a devastated country long before the events of the last week. So this is also an opportunity. I think also if we think in terms that this is going to be a reincarnation of the adventures, brutal adventures of ISIS, or a repeat of the Arab Spring, then I think we have another episode of conflict in the region. And that is why I think we should really learn from the lessons of the last 10, 15 years and understand that as Syria moves forward, only a comprehensive approach that will include all Syrians, will include also the social fabric, will include the religiosity of Syria, but at the same time, its secular face to live together. I think this is extremely important.
But when you say we should
We, I
take the
think, is
lessons of our mistakes,
collective region, I think. I think
the region,
we as collective region, the Arab world, those of us who are interested in Syria, I think we can't but learn from the episodes that we have seen in many years. And I think from that perspective also, even as our relations in the Arab world, the UAE and other countries in the Arab world are improving with Iran, we hope also that Iran learns that to come back and to try and reincarnate a program of regional expansion based on militias, based on sectarianism, is not really in the good of the region or in the good of Iran itself. I have a word also here for Israel, which I think is extremely important. Using also the crisis in Syria to structurally degrade Syria's capabilities might seem as a sensible thing from an Israeli practical point of view. But I think it's dumb politics, to be honest, because this is a new Syria that is creating itself, and you should have sent a different message. I don't say a message of, peace, because we're not there yet, but I think definitely a different message here. So we do need to learn. We do need to learn, and I've always said that the war that we have seen in the region over the year plus since the Hamas brutal attack on Israeli civilians, the war has been mainly driven by extremists on both sides. This is not a war that was propagated by the Arab state system. This was a war that was driven by players like Hezbollah and Hamas and the right wing, far right wing also of Israeli politics. So we also need to come back rationally and take politics to the center. Politics to become a little bit more moderate, leave and stay away from these big ideological projects, because it is these ideological projects are the ones that took the region like a car crashing at 200 kilometers into a wall.
You like cars.
Well, yeah.
well, can we concentrate a little bit further on Iran?
Yeah.
Because Iran, of course, is at the center of the game from all the aspects of the question. What would you drive you to believe that they would move toward a centrist position?
I think the first thing I want to say is, what is the current state of Iran's relations with many of the Gulf countries, including the UAE? And I would say that it is perhaps in the best state for many, many years. In the past many years, we have seen a rapprochement between Iran and between various Gulf states, and this is, in my opinion, a very positive thing. In my opinion, this is something that Iran is also eager to maintain and keep. At the same time, as I said, the events in Syria are fast moving, but you can clearly see, looking at the Iranian press and the Iranian political scene, that there are actually different conclusions. And in my opinion, reading that, I would say that everybody's conclusion to the developments that we're seeing today is moderation, de-escalation, realism in politics, and concentration on internal economic development and what makes people's lives actually improve, what improves their lives. So the idea basically is, as we look at these events and assess them I am sure that assessment is also in the Iranian side, in the Israeli side, and so on and so forth. And, my view is we need to learn from the lessons of the region. If we keep doing the same thing we have done, or some keep doing the same thing they have done before, they will end up with the same results. So we really need a different course, a course that concentrates on geoeconomics, a course that concentrates basically on de-escalation and understanding that there are political views that we will differ on, but we need to navigate and control them. I think this is something that is important.
So that's, of course, very extremely interesting. But so what you are saying is that you do not exclude the fact that Iran might be ready to start this de-escalation game, this de-escalation strategy. You do not rule that out. But then a key actor to help for that, of course, would be the United States and President Trump. So President Trump surprised all of us during his first term with the Abraham Accords, which I think are generally recognized as a big diplomatic success. So could you consider something more or less equivalent to the Abraham Accord, but this time that would include Iran?
Well, again, I mean, that is really, that I think number one is, for Iran to decide. But I think what is extremely important is the reasoning I have given becomes even more pertinent and important because also President Trump is there. So clearly, Iran's relations with the Arab world, with countries like ours, becomes even more important for Iran, more important also for us. I think we should use this period to work along that. On the Abrahamic Accords, I feel that the Accords have gone through a very difficult, turbulent period with all the events that are happening. It's held, and in my opinion also, that with the coming also of President Trump, the Accords will continue being what I would call a platform for greater cooperation in the region, economic, etc., like many of the projects like the IMEC project, etc., that we have seen. So clearly, we don't really know what the new American policy will be. We have glimpses of it based on President Trump's first term and based on different statements, etc. But again, vis-a-vis the region, I think as we see and as we seek more American leadership in the region, I think we also in the region have a responsibility to work at not repeating past mistakes, to work at trying to sort of understand that the region is very difficult for one ideological view to be superior. So we have to accept that the region has to reach an equilibrium, and that equilibrium, as I said, is about common sense, about in Syria, as I said, understanding very clearly that you do need an approach that is all-encompassing. In Gaza, making sure that you cannot negate the idea that you do need a Palestinian state, and we have to work very, I know that in today's conditions it's very difficult, but I think this is how we have to revive the idea basically of an independent Palestinian state. In Lebanon, also recreating through the efforts of the Lebanese, of course, because nobody can engineer this again, but recreating again the prospects of a nation state controlling its border, controlling weapons in its border, and controlling its own, let's say, economic and social destiny. I think that's very important.
Well, all this is, of course, very coherent, optimistic in a sense that under the chapter hope, but I would like to play the role of the devil's advocate for a second, because one can never build a strategy without taking at least some more negative scenarios. I'm thinking now of a recent conversation here a few weeks ago. A lot will also depend on Israel, of course. And in Israel, the prime minister is still Mr. Netanyahu. And Mr. Netanyahu is going to face also big choices. He may believe that the time has come for big wins. No, for instance, I understand that he said recently that the Golan Heights should now be permanently occupied. That means almost annexed by Israel. They speak also of annexation of the West Bank. It's something that one hears very often. And he might be tempted by solving in court the Iranian nuclear issue, maybe with the support of the United States. So, and Trump, after all, might also be tempted to choose that option. So, and common sense is not enough to make a judgment on which course Trump, will choose. So, can we go a little bit further, including a less pleasant scenario where Israel, in this case, would push in a quite different direction?
Well, I think here there's a couple of comments that I have. I think number one is working in a field like foreign policy and international relations. You always have to be optimistic. Otherwise, you can't come with a gloomy view of developments, etc. I think that optimism has to always be there, of the ability of diplomacy to unlock what seems sometimes closed doors or closed prospects. Having said that, we do have always also to plan for the worst. And as I said here, I mean, the idea basically of a repeat in Syria, for example, of something that is led by Al-Qaeda, or so that is led by the Brotherhood, or somebody who thinks that there is a repeat of a Muslim Brotherhood era. I think this will all lead us to another crisis in the region. So I think clearly this is a warning sign, because we've gone through it. And I think this is very important. Vis-a-vis, of course, Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu, I think the lesson also that we have is military success without a political conclusion in the region and in history has always been an elusive mirage. So clearly the idea basically is, with Israel's military success at a huge humanitarian cost in Gaza, with Israel's defeat of Hezbollah, with the fall of Assad, there has to be a political conclusion. Without that political conclusion, these defeats themselves will create new crisis in many ways. So I think this is extremely important. And while Prime Minister Netanyahu has been able to fashion the military success, I don't think he will necessarily be able to fashion the political conclusion. And this is where the international community has to come in. And I think that the Trump administration also understands these facts. I mean, even with President Trump's declared support for the state of Israel and its security, I think also he's a realist. And from that realism, I think we need to see more American leadership in this area. I think what we need to do today, in the wreckage of the war of the year plus since October last year, I think in that wreckage, the lesson is let us not recreate the wreckage again. The lesson is we need to take that wreckage, as bad as it is, and to try and find political conclusions in many ways. Some will be relatively clearer, as in Lebanon, not easier, but clearer, because here we have a 1701 agreement, and we have the necessity of electing a president, and the necessity of basically controlling the arms within the Lebanese military. We have a better game plan here, or we have a better view as the international community and regionally. In Israel-Palestine, it's more difficult, but it's clear. And the clarity here is you do need two states. In Syria, again, very difficult, dynamic events that are going on, but you need a system that would, number one, preserve Syria as one country, will encompass all of Syria's components, and will be a just system that can actually create opportunity. I'm not saying it's easier, but let us not go back and repeat the same lessons, because we'll end up with the same results.
Well, I propose to conclude by going back to Syria, where we started. I like, of course, your optimism, but it's not a naive optimism. I understand very well that it is a constructive optimism. So let us assume what you are saying is that the region, of course, itself should be the actor number one, and that the others should help, in various ways. The US, of course, in a prominent way, but perhaps also the Europeans. I mean, you can help.
Definitely.
To moving into that direction. So let us assume, to conclude, that we are actually moving in that direction, which would be a great success in itself, a huge success. Do you think that that would help solving the problems in Lebanon? Because that is solving the Syrian issue a prerequisite for solving the Lebanese issue, and would Lebanon follows the fate of Lebanon follow a resurrection of some sort of Syria?
Yeah. No, I think the optimism really reflects really our approach in the UAE. So on one hand, we have to sort of bring that optimism. We have to include Iran and Turkey into also the sort of discussion that takes place. But at the same time, we also, all the three issues are basically Arab issues with repercussions on various countries. So there is, I would say, an Arab consensus on this. So I think the optimism is more about avoiding the pessimism that is lurking right there behind, which as we saw, the complications of these issues. But then again, if you don't have the will of the Lebanese, it'll be very difficult for you to do anything in Lebanon, for example. I think all the Arab world today, the international community, France, the United States, everybody is in agreement that Lebanon now has turned the page. Now the issue, of course, the will of the Lebanese is extremely important. Syria, I think, is a bit too early, but we are sending, as I said, through our discussion, these signals that it has to be encompassing everybody. It has to build a system that everybody is comfortable with. It has to break away from Syria's traditional tortured history, as I mentioned. This has to be something new. But if we want to really repeat things that we have done before, I think we will have a crisis there. And again, in the case of Israel, Israel today is emerging with important military successes. But is Israel capable, working with others, in turning these into political successes on the Palestinian front and on the front of two countries that are next to them? So I think these are the things that we need to do. The optimism really is more of a roadmap. But at the same time, I think we also have to be aware that there are many sinister forces today that still live in a sort of ideological bubble and want to recreate their dream, which is, over the years has failed not once, but has failed many, many times.
Well, Anwar, you represent humanly what I would call enlightened wisdom. And, but, you know, it's not only enlightened wisdom, because you're also a man of responsibility. You are an intellectual, but you are also a man of action. And I think that enlightened wisdom, when it is combined with action, is the best one could expect from statesmen. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining today's plenary sessions. Those registered for the workshops are now invited to proceed upstairs to the residence area to join their workshop after our guests have left the stage. Following the workshops, we warmly welcome you to join us for our gala dinner in our dinner tent, where we will have the honor of a distinguished presentation from His Excellency Sheikh Salim bin Khalid Al Qasimi. Thank you.